everybody. Happy Friday. It's Friday morning. It's morning coffee and conversation with myself, Jen Snow and Jenn Dodds. And it's Hypno Soul Talk. And we're going to dive into the womb today. We're going to dive into the epic, profound healing that can happen when you go back to the womb and all the experiences that you may or may not, you may have throughout that. And we're going to talk about our different experiences as hypnotherapists, soul regression therapists, past life regression therapists, all that good stuff. So clients, yes, and our own, because I got a couple. I got an interesting one. So hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for being here. For those of you who are here and you like this content and you want more of Jen and Jen, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and share this podcast with everyone you know, because the more we can get out there and the more people we can reach, the more people we can help, the more people we can, share our tools, tips, and experience and expertise with. So thank you for doing that.
Yes.
So good morning, Jen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I've got my coffee. I'm really good now.
Yeah, me too. Can I just say too that listening to the intro, the bass in that music, I could listen to that all day. I don't know what it is. It's but the bass line in that music is just like,
it takes me into hypnosis.
Yeah.
I start to drop. I'm like, it's my little pregame. I know I jam in my head. I'm like, do. But yeah, no, that I do. That's why I chose that song. Everybody's like, I don't understand it. It's not very meditative. I'm like, yeah, it's not about being meditative. It's about just getting. I mean, I'd like to choose a couple of the Space Jam songs, but I haven't figured out how to use music without getting it taken down. And I hate that message when they're like, "You violated something." I'm like, "What?"
And
on my shorts, yeah.
And you start doing Tuesday night meditations?
No, when I was making
for the music,
yeah, when I would use the music from TikTok, YouTube doesn't like that. I'm like, come on, it says TikTok.
Oh, they're just saying that.
I'm glad too, Purple Princess, that it's Friday. Good morning, Alex. Good morning, Purple Princess, and good morning, everybody from TikTok, for joining us. I know it's Friday. Do you have any plans for the weekend? What's your weekend looking like?
Well, it's so exciting. There's a community cleanup going on this weekend. So I'm going to take a bunch of junk to the community center. Yes.
You know how good that feels, though, to clean?
I know. I'm looking forward to it. Get rid of clutter.
Mine's my closet.
Some clutter.
Yeah, mine's my closet. I love cleaning out my closet.
Yeah.
What's floating tomorrow? Purple Princess is floating tomorrow. You know what? I need to find a float spot in Fernan, BC. I haven't floated in 5 years, at least.
Yeah.
I used to float once a week. Yeah. It's such a good, I don't know. I love the no sound, the no lights, the nothing. I have the craziest light shows happen in my head and in my aura that I get very much entertained by it all. But it's just being there in weightlessness. Oh, it's amazing. It actually reminds me of the one time I went back to the womb.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Isn't that interesting?
Right? Yeah. No, it's one of the things. Actually did one of my womb journeys while I was floating.
Similar. I mean, you think about it, it's similar to sensory deprivation. You're just in that space, protected physically, just literally floating in the fluid, so yeah. Cool.
Yeah, no, it was like a light show when I was in the womb. That in the float tank, it was everything was flashing. It actually jarred me because I was like, what? Because it's supposed to be pitch black and there's supposed to be no sound. And that was the first time I actually had a really deep, epic journey while floating. And I literally jumped up and I'm like, okay, no, it's still dark in here. No, nobody turned on the lights, because you have a moment, right? You're supposed to be in this room, you're by yourself, you're in this capsule of nothingness, and all of a sudden there's this light show happening, and I did not expect that. It was pretty it's like that feeling of falling. You're like, wait a minute, you open your eyes and no, I can't see my hand in front of my face. I mean, I was blind at the time. I wasn't going to see my hand anyhow, but that was one of the moments.
It's true.
Still tried. Not gonna lie. I'm like, can you? I'm like, oh yeah, dumbass. Habits die hard. But what do you got going on? I just heard. Oh, 90 minutes less. Yeah, I would need that after that long drive and everything. It's hard. Dog rescue is hard.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like I've done a lot of horse rescue. I haven't done a lot of dog rescue.
Mm.
But I've worked with a lot of dogs on the animal side of things to help dogs rehabilitate and kind of find and let go of the trauma the wounds that they've carried. And anybody who is a part of any kind of rescue, my heart is with you, because the stuff that I'm sure you see can be just like heartbreaking. And with any animal, whether it be dogs,
Yeah.
horses, cats, like,
Oh, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
it's crazy. I've heard. Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
Like, it is crazy. The warmth of it is just amazing, but like the journey of it is unreal. And when you go back to that womb, I don't know about you, but the first time, like I said, I went back, it took me a little bit to associate and understand where I was. Did you ever find that? Have you ever gone back to the womb?
Oh, yeah, because it's not something that we consciously remember, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing that happens in hypnosis is a lot of times is even though stuff is coming through to us from the subconscious, the conscious mind is still there trying to make sense of it all. And how many times have you been looking at something and thought, oh, that's this, but then you get closer to it and it's like, that's not it at all. But that's what your brain is trying to make sense of it, relating it to something that it already knows. We spend a lot of time, I've heard it described like just darkness, just
Mhm.
floating. Some people have described it as just like a warmth, a glow, so many different descriptions, but it's just the conscious mind trying to make sense of it based on what it knows.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple people describe it as like this cozy small space, but I don't know about you, but I always get people who are really active in hypnosis, and then
Mm.
they start to start to get into the fetal position. And actually, it's usually one of my, like, I watch this, and they start to, like, you can see them starting to move
Mm.
into that that protected space where they feel fully protected and warm and cozy and inviting. And I mean, I've had other people describe it very much the opposite, depending on what they've
Yeah.
had imprinted upon them. But yeah, usually they start there first, and it's like, small, but not constricting. Like, it's funny, they're always like, it's a
Mhm.
small space, but there's a tone that people get. It's like this soft
Yeah.
tone. And I think that's really interesting how, you know, as a rule, there is a thread of similarity that people describe that space with,
Mhm. Yeah.
even though they've never talked to anybody else about going into the womb as a rule. And then they start to describe it as the same. And it's very interesting to watch them do that, because it gives us an indication where, I mean, we don't ever lead anybody, but it gives us an idea of where they've gone.
Mhm.
Because I know in a lot of practices, once you're in the womb, that's where you stop. You don't regress them further. You don't take them
Right.
back. You do a lot of the healing there, which, one way or the other, I think it's wherever you need to go as you end up going. But what was your first experience like jumping into the womb?
Um, for me, it was, if I'm remembering correctly, was more the sensation of the thoughts, like the feelings. This is not the way it was supposed to be. Oh no. You know, now what do I do? Feeling unwanted. Um, and that relates back to the feelings that my mom was feeling at the
Mhm.
time, but I didn't realize it until going through this session that they weren't my feelings. So it was that was really my, uh, I don't remember um, being anywhere. So it was probably just being aware of the feelings, the emotions.
Which is really common. Like, you think about we are so interconnected to our maternal figures and the environment that our maternal figure, like person, is, and we don't realize how much we absorb. We don't realize, like, and it starts in the womb, and then it happens throughout our entire life, how much of
Yeah.
our environment we absorb, especially in these very young formative years
Yeah.
that we're taking on, and we're owning things that maybe aren't ours.
Yeah.
Ever
It's a
had
question.
feelings? Yeah, feelings
Uh,
that you're like,
yeah.
why do I feel like this? Like,
Mhm.
I have no real understanding of what, and some of that can be because you absorbed it in the womb or when you were really small from those
Yeah.
people that were around, not intentionally. It's not like ever, you typically intentionally like upon us, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
amazing the insight and the awareness that you have in the womb. Like, I went to the womb, and my first experience was going back before my mom was in a coma.
Right.
And so I actually remember experiencing that time when she was in the coma, because it was just before I was like, okay, they're like, you need to be born now. And I remember the chaos of the doctors.
Mm.
That is what was really imprinted upon me with my first journey back to the womb, was the chaos of the doctors, the worry, the worry of my dad, the stress level in
Yeah.
that room, and the constant flow of doctors checking in on her.
Mhm.
My mom was actually really peaceful. She'll
Yeah.
tell you
I
she actually
remember her
really
saying
liked
that.
she really liked it. She was like, "Oh, this is great. I don't need
Well,
to
it's
wake
the
up."
float tank. It's the float tank, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I absorbed a lot of that chaos of like that moment of my mom going into the coma, to the point where I was I remember the conversation of them saying, "We need to take me
Mm.
now." So she had a C-section. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I would just remember like being like, that worry
Mhm.
was a big one for me, was like the
Yeah.
absorption of the worry. And then, like, I think for me, when in that moment, if I'm correct, it actually really got my maternal part of me, the caretaker part of me, really
Mm.
engaged,
Mhm. That makes
um
sense. Yeah.
where I became very maternal to my parents.
Mhm.
Like, my mom will tell you, I'm the mom. Like, not because my mom's a bad mom at all. My mom's a great mom, but I was more of the, like, I would take on that role, and that was a really interesting one. Unwinding that,
Yeah.
it shifted a lot for me in that moment. The imprints of that moment that you don't expect. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very, very interesting when, as a hypnotherapist, and taking people back to the womb intentionally or unintentionally, and uncovering all of the feelings and the emotions, and how much of that is yours? If you really feel into that, how much of that is yours?
Yeah, the
And it's
emotional,
amazing how much they're like, oh, right, it's actually not mine.
but you've lived with it for however many
Yep.
years until you've gotten to that point. Like, how many times countless times I've had people go back to the womb and unwind
Yes. Yes.
emotional wounds.
Yeah.
Um, One of my favorite ones was, I had a client come to me because they were having relationship problems,
Mm.
and they really felt like they couldn't really connect with people, couldn't connect and really build long-lasting, intimate relationships.
Mhm.
So we followed that part, and it took us back to the womb, and it was a glimmering moment where somebody, that she was an empath, so she actually picked up on somebody in the grocery store that her mom was talking to, who was talking to her mom about her inability to really connect and how sad it was making her, and somehow she absorbed that conversation and owned it, like owned it, and for 40 plus years had been living with this background programming that she wasn't capable of having intimate relationships and that they weren't safe. This
Mhm.
woman was talking about a divorce and things like that. So she had spent a lot of time going from
Wow.
relationship to relationship because she could never feel herself settling down. And it was really weighing on her. And so as we unwound that, she started laughing hysterically at herself. She just started laughing.
Well, yeah,
She's like,
I know.
"What was happening? Like, who does that?" kind of thing.
That's a great response rather than kicking herself for
Yeah, and it
doing
was
it.
just
That's a great response.
she just laughed, and she laughed for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just feel that full belly, that innocent, like childlike laugh. Oh yeah.
Letting go of it all.
Yeah, and she did. She let it go through laughter. That's
Yeah.
all she needed, was to actually laugh at herself and go, okay, enough's enough. I'm done
Yeah.
with that. Thanks, but no thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when she came out of that, and she actually really discovered that some of the people in her life, she actually did really have these beautiful relationships with, and now she can
Mm.
see them and
Yes.
be appreciative of them and actually see them for what they
Yeah.
were. And yeah, it was
Nice.
pretty life-changing for her.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah. So what are some of your client experiences with going back to the womb? What does it look like for you?
So there's that initial, so tell me, what you're aware of. And they're like, I don't notice anything. Oh, well, just, can you feel anything?
Mhm.
What do you feel? And then that's when things happen. So they think that they haven't gone anywhere, but then when you ask some other questions, like, and by they haven't gone anywhere, I mean they've ended up nowhere, if
The
that makes
void.
sense. Yeah, the void. So again, a lot of people, there's not a lot of light, there's not a lot of physical sensations. Hi, bud.
Yeah, Walker's
Um,
joining in. See, there's the growl. He's found
and
his voice.
so there's a lot of that sort of confusion about, well, I'm sensing something, but I don't know where I'm at, because up to that point they have been somewhere and are able to tell you where they were, when they were, and all that kind of stuff, what was going on. But now suddenly there's a I don't know where I'm at. But well, are you feeling anything? Are you noticing anything? And that's when that something is they are actually probably in the womb. So for me, there's either two places they could be. They're in the womb or they're in the life between lives.
I was just thinking about that. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
The doorway
Which
to the life between lives.
exactly. Yeah. So they are very close to being between lives, just before coming into this life. So there's some awareness coming in from that. I get a lot of people who are like kicking and fighting. I don't want to be here. That's an interesting one. Why I don't want to be here, and then so kind of uncovering that, is that from before? Is that their spirit going, oh God, I don't want to be human again, or is that are they absorbing that from their parents? Like, this is not a good situation, that kind of thing. So just trying to uncover, what is it, what are those feelings? So yeah, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Happens quite often, actually.
It's funny how every person's like, it's so small to fit into this body. Like, I get that a lot too. They're like, how did I, like that moment that your light body merges with your physical body, and it's like, oh my God, it's condensed, right? And I've had a lot of people like describe that to me, and I don't, like, what am I thinking? How am I going to fit in there? It's like this shrinking process happens, but it's kind of uncomfortable to.
Which is kind of a funny thing when you say that. Like, it's funny to me because space is like, it's just a human construct. So, and the physical aspect. So going from a seemingly like endless space into this little thing, it's just they've adapted to the humanness pretty quickly.
The density of it. That's how it was described to me.
Yeah.
It's about slowing down their vibration enough that they can become a part of this dense, fibrous being,
Yeah.
and then merge with it. And that merge, and how it happens, like, over time. It's not like just boom, you're there. It is a process during, your 9 months of how the soul integrates, and every part. It's a slow but not slow process when you look at it. And how it's very much described as shrinking. I always say this, like, I'm shrinking and I'm not sure I can do this again. And then it's all of a sudden they forget that they were shrinking, and they're in the womb, and here they are in this,
Yeah.
beautiful little body. But yeah, very interesting how that has also been a common thread comment that I've had.
And it's funny how quickly that we can adapt to the new environment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no wonder there are so many grumpy-faced babies after they're born. Like, oh, oh.
I had one client tell me, she's like, I didn't want to come out. I was warm. I was cozy. I was
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the rudest thing. Like we actually walked through the birth because I utilize like working through the birth when the change is made, bringing it
Yeah.
into that carnation has changed. So I have this little thing that I do to help that shift be implemented into the physical reality. And I remember this one woman stopped halfway through. She's like, this is just horrible. I'm cold. I was warm. Like, put me
Yeah.
back. And then she didn't want to be in the womb when we were there. But when she got out of the womb, she's like, no, thank you. I want to
Yeah.
go back to the warm and cozy.
It's got to
And
be
she
a
actually hates
shock.
cold. And it's funny thing. Like, she's like, I hated cold. Now I know why I don't like the cold because I came out and it was like cold. And she was very upset at the process. And we did laugh about it after because she's like, wow. This is
Interesting.
makes more sense than I thought when it came. And we mean we weren't discovering why she hated the cold, but that is where it was like has a little insight. I think that's why, and that's where it comes from. So
Yeah. Interesting.
mhm.
Huh. That's so cool.
But it's
Yeah. What about, so you went back to when your mom was in a coma, and any others that really stand out for you?
well, I've seen a lot of emotional wounds, like wounds be really transcribed.
Wombs, whatever.
I know, right? Tongue-tied. It happens. You know, my great grandma had a bit of a stutter, and I've noticed in the last 6 months, and I'm sure this is a legacy generational thing that I'm gonna have to unwind for her.
Uh-huh.
Get a stutter, and I'm noticing that I'm getting caught on words, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. All right, great grands, what is it that you need me to do so that we can unwind this for you? Like, I seem to be that member of my family who does all the generational legacy healing. So,
Oh, you can. So
lucky me.
yeah.
So it's interesting when I start noticing little traits that I've never had, but I remember them in my family members. It's usually them hanging around going, hello, so need you to do this for me. Yeah. So if you get a little stutter,
Just leave me a note.
I know. And I was actually talking to Josh about that. I'm like, I've been stuttering off, like not a lot, but just a couple times. And I'm like, my great grandma used to do that. And I remember her doing that. And I remember just having patience, like because I was pretty young when she passed. And I remember having like just kind of sit with her because I could feel her nervousness. And I'm sure it's something to do with that I have to unwind. But it's starting to come forward. And it's very interesting how that sometimes happens. And I'm like, you know, why don't you just come into a dream and tell me what you want to take care of? What I gotta experience it. But you know, here we go.
Yes.
That'll be a fun one. That'll be a fun one. But yeah, so I get stuck on words these days. I don't know. It's okay. I didn't come out of my meditation, my hypnosis trance yesterday. I made a video and I'm like, it's nighttime. I'm like, no, it's not. It's morning. I don't even know where you are right now. One of the ones that, okay, so this one is actually not that old. I had a client who was unable to have children, and she had a lot of emotional wounds around that, a lot of big feelings, and it had been really plaguing her, really holding her back. And so she decided she wanted to do some healing around that. And we ended up, actually, I have two that I'll talk about. In a sacred space where she could just connect to her soul and like look for that guidance and understanding, get to the blueprint room to see, you know, maybe why this part of her journey was implemented and what needed to happen for healing. And when we got to the sacred space where we could connect, these three little souls walked up to her, and they were the souls that she actually had a bit planned to have in her life. And they came out with their little hands, and she was describing this as she was sobbing through this, and placed their hands on her belly, and they explained to her that they had you know, this wasn't going to interrupt their journey, that they had alternate plans, that they knew that this could be a possibility, that they were able to, by being in her aura, absorb everything they needed from her because they chose her to be their mom, and and they just went through this whole healing, and they were actually healing the trauma that she was holding in her womb and releasing all of the emotion, the guilt, the shame, and they were doing all of that work and nurturing and mothering her in this
Mm.
process. And um yeah, it was like I actually got just to really and really observe this because they were doing all the work and the
Yeah.
communication. She was sharing it all with me, like I said, as she was kind of sobbing. And by the end of it, she told me her womb was full of white, golden, and orange and yellow lights. And it was just like she could see her womb repairing, and the softness and the joy and the happiness to know, because that's really what she was holding on to, is she thought
Mhm.
she failed these beautiful souls because, she knew from like when she was really young, she could have 3 girls. Like it was just very
Yeah.
apparent for her. And life didn't work out that way. And, circumstances, choices, everything kind of went the wrong, the different, not the wrong way, because it wasn't, because it was, she's still on her soul mission, and she got that confirmation too.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, it was really kind of beautiful to watch that transpire, and the beauty of that moment, and the fact that I got to share um, that time with her, and the healing, like it was just the relief. And that was her word, it was
Yeah.
relief that happened for her. She could move forward with that relief now in her life, and that knowledge that they had already incarnated. They had, they were just their higher selves, and that was the image of their higher selves coming forward, because she had this image of what her children would look like. And it just really helped her heal, and their souls just did all that for her, with
Wow.
her. And by the end of that process, she was like, I'm complete, I can move forward now. So yeah, that was
Mm.
probably one of
Wow.
the most impactful moments, where it wasn't about what was imprinted and in the womb. It wasn't about, like, but it was that healing
Yeah.
for her,
Yeah.
and that journey, and being able to find that relief and knowledge and knowingness that
Mhm.
there are many different avenues that we can take in life, but there are about 1,000 different plans. And, sometimes when plans
Yeah.
don't work out the way we think they are still working out. And everybody that a part of our soul team, spirit team, soul family is, they're prepared for free will.
Mhm. Exactly.
So,
Yes. Yes. Free will.
how about one of yours? What is one of yours, your most memorable moments?
Um, just that it's not so much a specific event, but a recurring feeling that happens is guilt and fear.
Mhm.
Um, uh, so the fear of, oh my God, I'm going to be a mom. How am I going to do this? Um, I don't know what I'm doing. Um, you know, how am I going to get this out of me? So the whole birthing process, right? All those fears. And then the babies often will absorb those fears and, oh, this is a scary thing, So there's a lot of letting go of the fear. And what's interesting is how it becomes related to the mom. So there's fear, but and guilt. I'm making my mom feel this way, right? I am the cause of this, so that guilt.
Mhm.
And then that gets carried through life as a recurring theme because it's related to the mom. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that emotion gets attached to the mom in a lot of cases. And, the people laugh about therapy and oh yeah, it's the mom's fault. It's always the mom, right? Well, you spent a lot of time in a very enclosed space with that person. So it's no wonder. So just seeing a lot of that kind of stuff get unwound and released and let go, because it was just, and we see this even if it's not the womb. the relationship between an emotion and an individual, and how it just keeps getting imprinted or reaffirmed throughout life, and just letting go of that initial one. Sometimes you go back to the womb, and that's the release point.
Yeah, it's amazing how we can reaffirm a statement or an imprint that we get that isn't ours. And anything that feels similar or is perceived to be similar kind of reaffirms that. And then we anchor it, we own it. And the owning of belief systems, the owning of emotions is really interesting when you find the root cause of them, because sometimes most times in the womb they're not yours. I mean, sometimes I have had people go back to the womb so they can unwind all their past life trauma, and so that they can come into this life free of it all. And how, one person in the womb did tell me, I'm the physical component, so now that I'm actually physically here in an incarnation, I can unwind everything now. And they actually did like 7 or 8 past life journeys and went through them in the womb, and we did a lot of screening and everything in it, because that was the part where there was a physical component where they were able to unwind everything before they actually were born, so that they could come into this incarnation without that baggage, without that heaviness of the other lives, because they knew when we went back that those would somehow get anchored or imprinted or triggered. So they wanted to do the work in the womb so that we could rewrite their timeline, and that timeline wouldn't be, because the timeline they were in, all that stuff was sitting there and it was affecting them subconsciously. So they unwound it at the womb so they could as they put it, literally reborn without that this time. And it was, that the timeline change was really quite profound. And it was like when she came through the birth canal, she was like, I can breathe again. I can actually breathe this time. So we carried that forward to the moment of present day. And she was just like, she carried a lot in her heart chakra, a lot of her heart, like her emotions and stuff. And so, that's where she really felt it the most. And she had always felt claustrophobic in her chest, like for no reason. She would just like, I don't understand. But we did discover there were several lives where she had that impression of being like crushed. And she did a lot of that work there, just in the womb, because she was able to go between worlds, stand between worlds in the womb, because you're so close to the doorway to lives between lives that you can do the work, but still be in a physical incarnation. And it was funny because her baby self, that version of herself, was like, oh, thank God. Took you long enough. I'm like, did you just like lecture yourself? She's like, yeah, that happened.
Why not?
Who knows, right? Or the womb can be used as a portal to move through past lives. I have a lot of people that go to the womb and that's their doorway.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing if you're doing meditation or trance work. Like if you take yourself back to the womb, that can be a tool that you guys can use. Have you ever used that for yourself, where you've used your womb, like going back to the womb and then using that as your gateway to move between lives? And
no, I tend to avoid the womb.
Avoid the womb. Right? There's a
well,
and now my hypnotherapist hat is like, okay, well, why are we avoiding the womb? What's going on?
Well, I don't know how many times I've gone back to the womb. It's like, oh, here again? Man.
Well, there's different layers. We all know this. I've gone back to one life like 4 times at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Different perspectives, right? When you go back there, you see it from a different lens because that old lens has been resolved.
Yeah, and whatever it is that you are clearing today is because you cleared stuff before, but you couldn't clear today's stuff until you cleared that other stuff. So it's the layers, those layers.
Right? The onion. Shrek said it best. Yeah, I'm owning that one forever. Do you have another story that you want to share with us? Another experience or client experience that you're allowed to share? A journey, I guess, is the best way to put that.
Again, there's really nothing specific. It's really sort of in general. These are things that come up. You said you had a couple.
Well, I had a past life that was related to the womb. I had a client who, again, and I totally have permission to share this. We've already talked about this when we'd done the session. She wanted to again heal she didn't have children in this life, and she wanted to discover a life of happiness, and so she went back to this life, and to a life where she had, I think, 6 children. And then it was placed in probably the early 1800s, based on her description. And she was kind of aware of the year. And she went through this beautiful life. And for her, when she came back, we went through the womb back so that she could heal that part for her life, as she brought that happiness and that joy into the womb. And actually the womb for her wasn't actually it was a very emotional space for her. We had done some work around that with releasing the imprints and the emotions of her parents and her environment at that time, and we'd done that in a previous session. So she actually brought that happiness back with her into this incarnation, and that knowledge that she was a great mom, and she had looked after these children, had this life. And so she brought back the thread and the emotion of happiness and being happy and content. And she actually infused that as her layer of protection, like a capsule of protection in her womb in this incarnation, so that when she was born, that happiness and that contentment will be what she brought, what she owned, bringing forward. So because there was a lot going on in her parents' external environment that was really not a lot of fun, and so she didn't know how to protect herself. So she brought that capsule in, and she just kind of stayed in that energy and that cell memory, and when it just brought her a lot of peace, and some peace that she hadn't had. She told me her entire life she had a lot of regret about not having children, and how that had really affected her, and she didn't realize how much it had affected her until we went through the process and were able to resolve that in those moments, and gave her a lot more insight, because she's like, I always knew it affected me, but I didn't really understand how deeply it was rooted into my everyday consciousness. And now I can feel that happiness and that contentment and have that cell memory there that allows me just to go, okay, it's okay that in this lifetime, in this incarnation, that wasn't the plan, and now I understand that. Because the previous incarnation she had 6, so she actually chose not to have any in this incarnation.
She was probably tired from having had 6 kids.
She was missing it though, right? You
miss that absolutely.
And there's a lot of a lot of imprints that she absorbed, so it was really neat to see how she used that as her layer of protection, and her to change her experience in the womb from being one of a lot of emotional imprints being absorbed, not because of who she was, but just because of what was going on in life at that time with her parents and their relationship. So she was able to kind of block that, the I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks back onto you kind of thing. That was her theme around that. And it was really neat to see how that changed things for her and how it just gave her some peace. So there's so much you can do at the womb.
Well, and I think too, being in the womb, you get a much better understanding of your parents and where they were at that time, because you're hearing the conversations, you're feeling the feelings, the emotions around bringing a child into this world. And so there's, it's pretty interesting, the insights that people get.
It's amazing how much knowledge you have in the womb. It's crazy. How we are so aware in the womb. Like, we don't think we are, but we really are. When you talk about all the science around like headphones and music and stuff like that, your baby's hearing it all.
Yeah, that's right.
At least that's what I've been told. And what my experience, I remember, like when I was in the womb, like it was incredible actually how much of the conversation I was aware of.
Wow.
And I actually remember laughing because they were doing an ultrasound and I had a halo around my head, and that baffled people. Like, that just sent people. And there was the shuffling of doctors coming in, and my mom was like, she told me about it, and she's like, yeah, it was like I was on display. Like, well, you're welcome. Probably has some dents now, but that's okay. But because they had no idea what that was, and that was actually one of the determining factors that I had to get out.
Your spirit self was present?
Apparently I was just showing off or something. I don't know. Probably got caught in doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing my entire life. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bad, like, it was bad. I was like sucked at like doing the bad, like doing something and be like, I totally got caught for that. I suck at this. I should just do all the good stuff because
Yeah, no, for me, it was there was a lot of that that regret, um, fear, not being unwanted, um, and I think that I mean that's fairly common, and the being unwanted comes from I was one of those instant babies. I was born 3 weeks after my parents were married. One of those boom. Oh, I was one of those quick babies. Because back in so long ago, it was not good to have a child out of wedlock. That meant bad things for the child, apparently.
yeah.
So they lied to get married, and just to save me from being born out of wedlock. Oh my God. So much so interesting how things have changed, but a lot of that. I mean, my parents were also in university when I came around. And so they had to drop university and their futures. And so all the fears about the future and what was going to happen. And this was not the plan, right? You're supposed to go to university and I was supposed to get a degree and I was supposed to do this and do that. But instead, I'm having this kid. So there was, like I ruined things, right? But we know now, that it was all part of the grand plan, and that, before I even came in and before even my parents came into this lifetime, we made the agreement that this is how it was going to happen. So bringing that sort of awareness to the moment and the moments in the womb is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and I chose them.
Yeah.
How many times have people they're like, I chose my parents?
Yeah.
And
So,
there's
what
sometimes
was I
they're like,
thinking?
there's a lot of like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And that's one thing that I've learned like over and over again. It's how people talk about how they chose their parents to learn specific things, whether it be what to wear or what not to wear. But to also be a part of that generational legacy healing process.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it was, and I had one person really kind of educate me, and I say educate me on this, on how when we choose our parents, we're also choosing the generational and legacy stuff. Because sometimes we haven't experienced it, so we can experience it through that legacy, through that generational connection, and either choose to continue that experience or unwind that experience, and how that's a major factor in a soul's journey. And it can determine what generations we decide and drop into. So that was very interesting, getting that insight on. And I always laugh because I always say, my parents do teach me what not to wear and what to wear, and I'm very grateful for it. But when I was younger, I was not grateful for it. I was a dick. And, and I've really learned that like I can learn so much from them and make some different choices, or make some choices to align with that. And how that's been like a healing thing too, with the generational stuff and legacy imprints that are there, a part of our DNA, or our psyche, or our soul's imprint in this world. And how just understanding that from that perspective allows us to either continue or go, okay, let's unwind this, let's let this go, this reoccurring pattern, this belief system doesn't sit anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. So
how many
very
times when you hear people say, I didn't pick my parents, it's like, what, just a minute now. Actually,
I try not to. I try not to be that guy, because I didn't know that for the longest time. And my mom would actually be like, you chose me. I think she like read the book after me, like Many Masters, Many Lives, something like that. And that's where she kind of got this, because I would read these books and then my mom would read them after me, or vice versa, because she was starting to, when I was about 16, really started to kind of open up to what maybe some of her gifts are. She's gonna hopefully she's not listening. Don't tell my mom I told you that, but she's very gifted. And but it was a very taboo thing back when she was younger, so she had to go through a lot of like unwinding of those belief systems. But she's like, remember, you picked me. And I'm like,
But it was actually a group decision.
It was a total group decision, but I mean, I probably did. I know I would have picked them. Like, they've been amazing teachers in
Yeah.
my life and opportunities to learn and to progress.
And
But
they volunteered for the job.
I don't know why they volunteered. I mean, they was not. I'd have been like, "Are you sure?" I probably asked them, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Like, you know what I'm gonna be like
How
when I go
bad
there.
can it be?
I'm a stubborn ass. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You know what? Talk about triggering your parents on like making them feel like they're not needed. Yeah, mommy, I do.
Mm, yeah.
Mommy, I do. And that was my motto when I was young. Like, she's like, I really like to help you at some point. I'm like, no.
I do.
Not that I could do it. I couldn't lift that saddle on my pony. I was too short. But God forbid I was not gonna take help from my mom or my dad. Like I was just like, talk about triggering your parents. Like I triggered them big time. Yeah. But it's all good now.
That's good. That's good.
We've unwound that.
Excellent. Glad to hear it.
Any other insight about the womb that you've experienced in your chair as a teacher too? As a expert in this field.
Expert.
Expert in this field.
It's just helping the clients become aware of where they are. Because like I said, a lot of times there's like, I don't know, there's nothing here. There's nothing. So just leaning into that a little bit. Okay, just what do you notice if you can't see anything? What else? Use all your other senses, and what else is showing up for you? So just helping other hypnotherapists just become aware of the possibilities of hearing somebody say, I'm not anywhere. I didn't go anywhere, or I'm nowhere. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are nowhere. So just helping our clients understand that there's more than just the visual. There's more than just the knowing of where you happen to be. And in fact, it's almost the opposite. It's like that, going back to the floating tanks. All your other senses have yet to develop. And it's just your awareness, your mind, your feelings, your emotions. Those are what's developing first. And the other senses are slowly being developed. So, I think helping clients tap into the other side of things than just the physical or the obvious, what we're used to in our everyday human life.
Yeah, the temperatures and textures. That's a big one. That sensation usually helps, I find, with people discover a little more information about when they pop into the womb. And because there's, like I said, there's always a warmth to it in that, say, or like, but yeah, that's one thing. If you're like wanting to journey and do your meditations to the womb, think about what textures and temperatures, like let yourself kind of just settle into those feelings, those sensations, and then let it come to you. Again, let it come to you. That's the biggest thing, right? I know when I first started out as a hypnotherapist, that was the worst thing and hardest thing, was to go because you get anxious, right? I remember being anxious. I'm like, oh my God, I've done something wrong. But really just giving yourself the time to just be in that moment and let it reveal itself. Because sometimes it takes a little bit for your inner senses to engage. But once they engage, there's a lot of information that comes through. And the womb is actually a great way to learn that, because
exactly
it can be a very neutral spot to begin with. And neutral is uncomfortable because we all think we're going to see something, feel like, you know what I mean? We all have this great impression that it's going to come and it's going to be boom. But sometimes it takes time. That's the one lesson I've learned. Being the guide to that spot is sometimes the womb takes time to understand. And then it's like floodgates are open. So,
Well, we as humans are so used to dealing with our senses.
mm,
Those, are obvious senses. And think about you when you lost your vision.
hmm
What other
all,
senses suddenly showed up?
all of
I
them,
say
all of
suddenly.
them.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
sense of smell, I gotta tell you, worked for and against me, but my hearing actually was the biggest one. And it never went away. I can hear the softest whisper in a crowd of rooms, and it's like I'm eavesdropping, but I'm not attempting to eavesdrop. That was probably the most uncomfortable sense that came forward
Mm,
so acutely, was my sense of hearing, because it was overwhelming, very overwhelming, to
yeah.
the point where I couldn't be in crowds for a long time because I couldn't manage the 25 conversations going at once
Mhm.
and actually talk to somebody. I would go off into space and people like, hello, if you left the building, are you even here? Like, hello, this is kind of like, come on, people. And yeah, no, because I would just go blank because it was just too
Well,
like sensory overload.
yeah, absolutely. And I think too with you, and then we've had this conversation before, but your internal senses
Hmm.
were amplified, right? Because you had to learn to rely on them. And I believe that we have those before we are actually physically brought into this physical world. So helping our clients tap into those inner senses
Changes
is
everything
it's a
as they come forward
great, yeah.
because they learn that the things that they're seeking are already a part of them.
Hmm.
And that, yeah, it can be why you go to the womb, is to learn that. Very, like, there may be no healing there, but it might be just discovering that
Hmm.
everything that you thought you didn't have a part of you is already a part of you, and you just have to turn on the switch and allow the
Yeah,
switch to be turned on. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up to the end of our hour here. So, do you have any insight, tools, and tips and tricks that you might want to offer everybody, that when it comes to being able to get to the womb, to go to the womb, to find that, to just,
Hmm.
discover that journey?
I think just being open to it. I think I say this almost every time, just being open to it, um, and allow it to happen. Don't rush things, because like we just said, we're so used to using our physical senses that we tend to expect that to continue. But find yourself in a hypnosis situation, session, not a situation, hypnosis situation. Um,
Well, hey, you know what? Sometimes that is it when you're listening to music and you're all of a sudden gone,
this
no
is true.
longer in Kansas.
Yeah, so just allow yourself to just give yourself the time uh, to just see what's going on and not see, not visual see, but experience
Perfect.
what's happening.
Perfect. Yeah. And be patient with yourselves, guys.
Yeah.
Be patient with all your journeys. And if you set the intention that you'd like to go back to the womb, when you get there, asking yourself, what does this mean to me?
Hmm.
What am I supposed to learn from this moment? What do I need to know from this moment? What is this moment showing me?
Yeah.
And allowing, having a question or intent that you set before you go on the journey can really help you discover the answers or the synchronicities that'll unfold before you. Sometimes it's going there and
Yeah.
unlocking the moment, and then moving when you come out of it in your conscious space, allowing the synchronicities to really guide
Hmm.
you to that information. And sometimes, like I said, I was having this conversation. I got a message from our soul regression session from somebody, couple of somebodies, that said that they really, when they went on the session with us and went on the journey with us, they had some things revealed to them,
Mm.
and how that the information around the reveal of things they need to work on, or things that they resonated with that maybe aren't aligning with who they want to be, have had a lot of synchronicities come to them in the conscious space to guiding them. And it didn't make sense. All of it didn't make sense as individuals, but as a collective, as they started to write it down
Mhm.
and went back and looked at it, it's making a ton of sense. So be open to your synchronicities, whether you're in trance or out of trance, because things unwind not only in trance, but they also unwind outside of trance. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
and have fun
And
with it.
and I would say is if you're feeling strong emotions, how much of them are yours?
Hmm. Is this mine?
Yeah,
My everyday question for the collective: is this mine?
yeah,
When I'm in a funk, I'm like, is this mine? And sometimes it's not, but I've absorbed
yeah,
it, and then I'm owning it. And I'm like, yeah, not
Mm,
willing to own it anymore. So,
yeah.
all right. Well, guys, this is the end of the Friday show. Thank you for joining us, having coffee with us, and being
Hmm.
a part of our conversation. And we will be live Wednesday. I think we're going to do a womb journey. Why not? Why not follow this show with a womb journey? And then we'll see where that takes us. I'll work on that. And for those of you who like this content, want to see more of Jen and I, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that comment button, and share button. And we will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day, guys. And thanks for being
Bye.
here, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
Do, do, do.